Welcome to our show. Today we're talking about putting yourself out there. What do I mean by this? I mean taking a risk. I mean being at the edge of your comfort zone. Think about that post that you may be hesitating before posting on social media, that you know is the right thing to post, but you still somehow hesitate. Or think about that project that you're just about to reach out for or apply for or tell a prospective client about, but you're sort of procrastinating or sort of hesitating. Those are the situations we're talking about. In these cases, what are some ways that you can put yourself out there a little more? Today, I'm going to share 3 frameworks with you. They are, oh my gosh, that's such small font. The 3 frameworks are Bravery, the Big Question, and the Only You Question. Let's look at you putting yourself out there. So one of you is just writing in and saying, I fear conflict. Very normal fear. Some of us really fear conflict. Some of us really reach for conflict in order to diffuse it, which also might be a fear of conflict. So thank you for bringing that up. Yes, some of us fear specific things. Let's start with these 3 frameworks, and you tell me as I'm going through them. Think of something you don't want to do. Think of a situation where you actually do not want to put yourself out there, where you're thinking, I could a little, but I don't want to. I'm right at the edge of my comfort zone already, maybe. So think of that situation. This way it'll be interactive and practical. And after each of these 3 frameworks, I'm going to say, does this one work for you? It might not. So you get to try on like 3 hats today. Think of a specific situation where you could be going just outside your comfort zone, and focus on that one. So you got it. Do you have one? One specific situation. Let's start. One framework for putting yourself out there a little bit more is a framework that's very close to my heart. I've taught a course on this a couple of times, and it's something that I myself ask myself at a certain point in the day. Mine happens to be at 3 p.m., but it's almost like taking vitamins. It's the thing that I want to ask myself. So here's a framework. The framework is for putting yourself out there. What if you use the framework of bravery? And I'll give you my working definition of bravery, which I've developed in close conversations with a colleague. Here's a definition of bravery for you to use to potentially put yourself out there more. Bravery is doing what is right, even when it is hard. So just consider that in the context of your own putting yourself out there, going beyond the comfort zone. What would it mean if you focus on doing what is right, even when it is hard? And I want to point your attention to 2 key words in this. What is right? You know, when I've spoken to people about this, doing what is right, even when it is hard, people focus on that word right. And they say, this is the truth that I need to share. Or this is what's really right to move the world forward. And when you switch perspectives like that, doing what is right, it takes you a little bit outside of yourself. It's not, oh, can I do it? Can I be the person to discuss this? Can I be the person to try this on? But it's really in service of that bigger why, which we've talked about on this program before. But it's in service of that truth or that rightness. How does that perspective work for you with the thing that you might want to be putting yourself out there with? How does this first framework of bravery, how does it work for you in terms of trying that thing out a little more? Okay, so that was framework number 1, which is to try on the hat of, okay, do I want to do this thing that's just outside my comfort zone if I really consider, doing what is right, even when it is hard? Does that fit for me? Okay, let's set that aside. That was framework number 1. We're moving on to framework number 2. For the situation of putting yourself out there, and you have a situation in your head, here's framework number 2. I'll personally tell you that I tend to call this Kelly's question. Kelly Beischel is a frequent appearer, a frequent guest on this program, and a frequent panelist. She's phenomenal. She's super. She's an amazing executive coach. And we've recently had a conversation about this with a group of coaches. And some of us coaches are doing things right at the edge of comfort. And Kelly said, well, let me give you a scenario. So some of us coaches are doing things at the edge of our comfort zone. And sometimes we get pushback and we get people writing to us, that's the wrong way to think about goal setting. That's the wrong way to think about what your comfort zone is, or even bravery. I'm just using examples that you may have seen frequently and recently on these programs. That's not the right way to think about empathy in leadership at work. And when we get this, this is also validating in the sense of, here's what Kelly asks. If you've put yourself out there and you've taken a risk, again, social media or offering a specific kind of new project, if you have done this, if you've put yourself out there and you don't get any kind of challenge, or you don't get any kind of conflict, or you don't get any kind of just these sort of iterations that we do when we're challenging and checking out whether something is a fit for us. If you don't get any kind of that, then here's framework number 2. Kelly says, have you gone big enough? Framework number 2 is, have you gone big enough? When you try this, when you put yourself out there, when you actually go right at the edge of what you think you're comfortable with, but what you really believe, have you gone big enough? Are there people who disagree with you? Just think about the programs that we often run here, which is the belief show. What do you believe that others in your field may not believe, that others in your field may disagree with? So framework number 2, have you gone big enough? Okay, we're moving on to framework number 3. Just to recap, for putting yourself out there in any kind of situation, personal, professional, or if you're posting something on social media that might be a cross between personal and professional. We've considered the framework of bravery. Would you do this if you consider doing what is right, even when it is hard? And we've considered Kelly's question, which is the big enough question. Have you gone big enough? Okay, framework number 3. Framework number 3, and I'll tell you a story about this. A good friend of mine was getting a PhD, and as he was, his advisor spoke to him regularly about things that were important for him to consider as he did his PhD studies, and then went on to work in the working world. And I have always loved, I heard this question, I think, over 20 years ago. I've always loved the question that the advisor asked my friend. The advisor asked, what is it that only you can do? As you think about putting yourself out there, and you think about the things you know, the way you are, the knowledge you want to share, then how do you want to be? How do you want to show those things that only you can do? I actually love this question. I've used this question in coaching settings where people are really trying to figure out what are their priorities? Where do they want to go in life over time? What is it that only you can do? And now I'll get a little bit into how we can use these, and then we'll recap all of them and tell me what works for you. Is it the bravery part? Is it the Kelly's question about going big enough? Or is it what only you can do? And I'll go very direct here. What are some of my things? You have seen me play cello on this program, and you have seen that it's a work in progress, and I'm about 5 months into learning how to play the cello, and it's super fun and super challenging. It's really funny, but I like the challenge. It's also super relaxing when I go back and play some of the pieces that I learned a while ago. What I'm saying is, for me, showing that to people, whether it's to you all or on Zoom to my parents, that's nerve-wracking. That's way at the edge of my comfort zone. It's so different from the other instrument that I've learned in my life, which is playing chords on a guitar. That's comfortable. The guitar's right up against you. It's cozy, it's comfortable. This cello. So what I'm saying is that's almost a casual example. But another thing that's right at the edge where I also use these 3 frameworks are, I have written some children's books, and I'm working on getting them out and publishing them. And I have a great publishing company that I'm working with, but I just feel like I'm coming up against the wall. I'm stopping it at some point, and I don't want to do that anymore. So I'm also using these frameworks. I'm saying, okay, Senia, it's right to get this content out because it shows some positive psychology frameworks to kids in kids' language. So it's right. It's doing what is right, even when some of the things like the graphic design of the book are way above me. Am I going big enough? I'd be going big enough if I actually get this out there and the next book and the next. And they're all in process, and they're actually even outside of me, but it's just making sure that I get this finished and approved. And then what is it that only you can do? So I've got that combination of positive psychology and this kid storytelling, which I so enjoy. So yes, that fits. And then I say, all right, like, do it, Senia, do it. So now you've heard my version of these as well. I'm going to recap and say what they were again, and let me know which one can work for you. So to summarize, putting yourself out there. Tricky, sometimes not fun, gives us feelings of, do I want to do this? I'm not only speaking about social media, but I'm speaking about professionally, going for a project that might be just a little bit where you're excited, but you're not totally sure. And I've been speaking with people who are right at that level right now. So that's why this is fresh in my mind. 3 possible frameworks. Consider framework 1. If the definition of bravery is doing what is right, even when it is hard, how does that apply to you in putting yourself out there? Framework 2, Kelly's question. Have you gone big enough? Are there people that actually disagree with you? Are you not just saying, hey, goals are good? And you've seen me on this program. I say the opposite. I actually say goals are not always good. But have you gone big enough? I don't really mean have you gone controversial enough, but have you gone strong enough with even the outside edges of your belief so that people see where they might bump up against you? And question number 3, what is it that only you can do? So 3 perspectives today for putting yourself out there. And what I'd like to end with is go for it. Try it a little bit. Get right at the edge of your comfort zone and a little further. Try these 3 frameworks on for size and see how they fit for you. All the best, and we'll see you next time.